But here's something that happens every single day in companies across every industry. A scanner finds a vulnerability. It spits out a number. A security team writes a ticket, and then nothing happens. Not because nobody cares, it's because the number doesn't mean anything to the person who controls the budget. A CVSS score of 9.1 tells a business leader absolutely nothing. It doesn't say how much money's at risk. It doesn't say how many customers walk or which customers walk. It doesn't say whether production stops for an afternoon or for a week. So the ticket sits, the vulnerability sits, and sometimes, that's how you end up as the next headline. Today we're fixing that. We're going to take a vulnerability from a raw technical finding all the way to a one-page document that an executive can read in 5 minutes to immediately understand what to do about it. Now, we're going to use a fictional company called Precision Components as our working example. They're not real, but you are. So pay attention because this is going to be your playbook. So I want to set the scene. Imagine a mid-sized manufacturing company. They've got 42 employees. They've got $8.5 million in annual revenue. They do CNC machining in Plano, Texas. They make custom metal parts for automotive suppliers, aerospace subcontractors, and local hardware startups. They've got an ISO 9001 certification, and they just brought surface treatment in-house. Things are going pretty well. Now, imagine their production management system has got an unpatched SQL injection vulnerability in a legacy quality control reporting module. The scanner flags it up as a CVS 9.1. That's critical with a big red number. So the security team, they send an email. The shop operations manager reads SQL injection and thinks, I don't know what that means. I got 40 machines I need to keep running though. So it gets prioritized behind everything else that feels more urgent. And this is exactly the kind of thing that happened at Target in 2013, just at a much larger scale. FireEye detected malware, and it generated a bunch of alerts, but nobody translated those alerts into business terms. 40 million credit card numbers later, the cost was millions and millions of dollars. The technology worked, but the process didn't. The problem isn't the scanner. The problem is the gap between what the scanner says and what the business hears. And that gap, that's where money goes to die. Chapter 3 of Cyber Risk is a Myth lays this out in pretty simple terms. Business impact analysis is a translation methodology. It takes something technical, a vulnerability, a CV, a CVSS score, and it converts it into the language business leaders actually speak. Dollars, downtime, customer trust, regulatory exposure. The book walks through a full BIA framework, but today we're going to work with a specific tool from that chapter, the Vulnerability to Business Impact Mapping Framework. It's a one-page document with 5 steps. That's it. 5 steps that turn a scanner output into a business decision. And here's why that matters. A CVSS score tells you the vulnerability is critical from a technical standpoint. A BIA tells you it's urgent from a business standpoint. Those are different words with different meanings, and confusing them is an expensive mistake that you just don't want to make twice. Now, if you want the full theoretical treatment, do check out the book, but honestly, you've got everything that you're going to need right here. So we're going to get stuck into it. I'm going to go back up to the top of this template, and we're going to walk through it. Our first step is to identify the vulnerable asset. Now, that's the easy part, but don't rush it. You're capturing the basic facts about what's broken and who owns it, not who owns the technology, who owns the business function or the business process that it supports. For Precision Components, the system's the production management system. That's the thing that runs their whole shop floor. Scheduling, component tracking, quality verification, all of it flows through this one important system. The technical vulnerability? It's that unpatched SQL injection in the legacy quality control reporting module. Somebody built a reporting tool years ago, didn't patch it, and it's been quietly sitting there ever since. Does that sound familiar? But here's where most vulnerability reports stop. A 9.1 and a ticket. Let's keep going, and we're going to move to step 2, where we're going to map our business dependencies, and that's where the framework starts doing real work. You're answering a really simple question. If this system goes down, what else stops? So for Precision Components, 3 primary business functions run through their system. CNC production scheduling and execution, that's your actual machining work. Quality control and ISO 9001 compliance verification, that's how they prove their parts met spec. And customer order fulfillment and shipment tracking, that's how they get paid, and that tends to be kind of important. Now the dependent processes. These are the day-to-day activities that break if the system breaks. Now in the book, I included a story from my past about a manufacturing company that found a forgotten quality control server feeding data into their production system. Nobody knew it was there. It wasn't on any diagram. But if it failed, defective products could ship. That's the kind of dependency you uncover in this step. Hidden connections that don't show up in your network topology diagram, but would absolutely show up on a complaint line. So let's move to our next step. where we're going to assess the potential business impacts. And this is really the heart of it. There are going to be 4 categories: financial, regulatory, operational, and reputational. We're putting a dollar figure on a vulnerability. Now, some of these are going to be estimates. Yeah, estimates are better than it's bad, though, right? An executive can make a decision with a range. They can't make a decision with a CVSS score because, remember, they don't understand what that is, and that's not their fault. Let's start with direct costs: incident response and forensic investigation. For a company this size, we're looking at about $45,000. That's your external consultants, internal overtime, and the cost of pulling people just off their normal jobs. Recovery costs: that's your system restoration, your patch deployment, and your testing. Let's call it $30,000. Revenue loss. Now, this is where it gets interesting. If production halts for 4 days and daily revenue is around $23,300, you might think that's $93,200, but it's not. When a manufacturer stops delivering, customers find other suppliers. Rush orders get diverted. Contracts have penalty clauses, so you multiply by a factor of 3.5 to account for diversion and penalties. That gives us our estimate of $340,000. Long-term financial impact: automotive supplier penalty clauses kick in. Some customers start conversations with competitors. Call it $150,000, and now add it up. $565,000. That's what a CVSS 9.1 score looks like when you speak business. Let's move on to the operational impact section. So how long does disruption last? 3 to 5 days for a company like this. Not just IT recovery, full production restart, quality recertification if things go really awry, as well as backlog clearance. So which departments get hit? The production floor, obviously, but also quality control, shipping and receiving and sales, and who now have to explain delays to your angry customers. Productivity loss: 42 employees, 4 days, 10 hours a day. That's 1,680 staff hours of people sitting idle or doing manual workarounds that honestly just slow everything down. Process delays: customer shipments delayed by a week, an aerospace prototype delivery missed by 5 days. For a company exploring export opportunities and trying to deepen their relationships with aerospace subcontractors, that's not a good look. Reputational impact: customer trust? It's high. When you miss deliveries because of a security issue, customers remember. Brand damage? Medium. This isn't a public data breach, but word travels in a tight industry circle. Media coverage? That's pretty low. A 42-person machine shop isn't making the evening news, but the industry network's still going to know. Next, let's move on to our regulatory impact section. So potential violations: ISO 9001 quality management certifications at risk, and a potential breach of an NDA with aerospace contractor. The estimated penalties: $25,000 if you need to redo your ISO certification and if you need to do another audit. And then for reporting, we have to notify our affected customers, probably contractually, regarding our delayed or our impacted activities, right? This is one that most people miss, because if that quality control reporting is compromised, the integrity of the quality data, that's in question, right? And none of these audits are cheap. Let's move on next to our 4th section, where we're going to calculate the business risk rating. And there's 2 numbers. That's all we really need here. Likelihood of exploitation on a scale of 1 to 5. Well, there's publicly available exploit code for SQL injection. The system's on an internal network that third parties can access. That's a 4, not a 5 because it's not internet facing. But a 4 is close enough to worry about that if you haven't got a segmented network in place. Business impact severity. This is also a 1 to 5 scale. This is a core production system. Every revenue generating function goes through it. And your ISO 9001 compliance is at stake, so that's a 5. That's the absolute maximum. So then just multiply them. 4 times 5 equals 20 on a scale that maxes out at 25. That's not a suggestion to schedule a meeting or maybe form a committee. That's a reason to act. So finally, let's move to step 5, where we're going to determine our risk response. And now we're going to make a decision. And we're going to document it so nobody can pretend that they didn't know that this was a thing. So given a risk rating of 20, the recommended action is immediate remediation within 24 hours. Not next quarter, not after the budget cycle, 24 hours. So what's the actual fix? Apply the vendor patch to the quality control reporting module. Strict vendor network access through a segmented VLAN so third parties can't wander into your production systems. And deploy WAF rules to block SQL injection patterns while the full remediation is completed. That's 3 layers. Not because one isn't enough, it's because this system touches everything. Now the cost? $12,000. That's the patch, the VLANs configuration, the WAF rules, and the labor to deploy them. $12,000 to protect against a $565,000 exposure. And risk reduction? 85%. You won't get to zero. Nobody gets to zero. But you'll get to a place where the remaining risk is manageable and it's been documented. So take a look at this document, right? There's 1 page, there's 5 steps, and here's what it says to any executive who's going to go read this. The production management system has a critical SQL injection vulnerability. 3 business functions depend on it. If exploited, it costs roughly $565,000. The risk rating is 20 on a 25-point scale. We can fix it in 24 hours for $12,000 and reduce the risk by 85%. Now compare that to what a scan report says. CVE, number, CVSS 9.1. Critical. Which one of those documents do you think gets approved in a budget meeting, or in this case, an emergency meeting? That's the entire point. The scanner output's correct. The CVSS score is accurate, but it's not actionable until someone translated. And that translation isn't operational. It's an optional. The difference between a patched system and a breach that costs 15 times more than the fix. A CVSS tells you a vulnerability is technically critical. A BIA tells you it's commercially urgent, and only one of those gets a check signed. Now again, if you want the full theory behind why this translation gap exists and how it keeps biting organizations, go pick up Cyber Risk is a Myth. But honestly, this is just 5 steps. It's 1 page. Go fix something.